Hello, my name's Sherry Forsyth. I'm a peak performance coach, and for the whole month of April, the topic that I'm going to be discussing are the different difficult or challenging emotions that we can experience in our life. Please note that I don't say negative emotions, because very often, even though these are difficult emotions to live through, they can have a very positive effect on our life. So today I'm speaking about anger. I'm speaking about what it does to our bodies. I'm speaking about, I'm going to ask a few questions for you to see if possibly you have a problem with anger yourself. A few ways to pick up, the more subtle ways of picking up if somebody is angry, so that then we know how to respond to them. And then lastly, a few tips on how to deal with your anger if and when it should arise. So the first thing I want to say is that anger actually is a very healthy and natural emotion. It gets a bad rap in the press, but actually it's normal, because what anger shows us is that we feel that something is wrong. It might be unfair, or we might be being treated incorrectly, but it shows that there's something is wrong, and therefore that we need to correct it. Okay, which can be a very proactive and positive way of looking at anger. However, what goes wrong often is not the fact that we're feeling anger, but rather how we manage what we do with that anger. I hope that makes sense to you. So our anger usually comprises of three different parts. The first one being the physical part. In other words, the neurochemistry of your brain. What is it doing to your body? And there we have the symptoms of anger, like a racing heart, the sweaty palms, breathing quickly. We feel we've got high blood pressure. All of those very physical gut reactions. That is the physical component of anger. The second component of anger is our cognitive reaction. In other words, what we perceive to be the problem. Okay? And that perception can sometimes be wrong. So we just need to bear that in mind. And then the third reaction is our behavioral reaction. In other words, what words are we saying and what are we actually doing? What are our actions at this time that we are being angry? So I want to start by reading a short story from a professor who, while teaching, he asked his students, why do we shout in anger? Why do people shout to each other when they are angry? The students thought for a while, and then one said, because we lose our calmness. But the professor asked again, why shout when the other person is right next to you? Isn't it possible to speak to him in a soft voice? Why do we shout? The students then gave the professor some other reasons, but none satisfied him. So finally he explained, when two people are angry at each other, there is a distance in their heart psychologically. There is a distance in their heart psychologically. To cover that distance, they must be able to shout so that they can hear each other. The angrier they are, the further the distance is between their hearts, and the louder they have to shout. Then the professor asked, what happens when two people fall in love? They don't shout at each other, but they talk very softly. Why? The answer is because their hearts are psychologically close. And I think this sums up very nicely what anger is about. Okay? We need to try and control that our hearts are not being distanced from each other during our anger. So, why is it important to control our anger? Very often people who are very angry feel that there's nothing wrong with their anger. They are maybe just a little bit volatile, but essentially it's all okay. Actually, it's not. When we are angry, it can affect every single area of our life. It can affect our physical health, our mental health, our careers, our relationships with friends and family, and then very closely with our spouse and with our children. So it is something that we need to learn to control and get a grip on. So very often the emotion that comes out is anger, but actually there's another emotion behind the anger. So anger is the secondary emotion. What is the primary emotion behind it? So I'll give you an example. For example, I can feel very hurt by something, and I won't then communicate my hurt, I'll communicate my anger. Okay, so when we are hurt, what comes out is the anger. So anger is often a cover to other emotions like hurt, frustration, harassment, injustice, unfairness, rejection, criticism, and so the list goes on. So when we are trying to have a look at what is causing our anger, the first thing is to try and find out what is the emotion behind our anger. And a question that can help you to try and determine this is to say, if my anger had a voice, what would it say? And then just be and see what comes into that space, because that often can be a hint or a clue as to why you are angry. Does that make sense? So I'm going to talk now about, very briefly, I won't bore you, I promise, about the neuroscience of anger. So the minute we feel the big emotion of anger, our body is flooded with chemicals and neurotransmitters, and this flood of chemistry has the physiological responses of the increased blood pressure, heart rate that I mentioned a little while ago. Now, this physical reaction can last between 5 and 10 minutes. Okay? Now, that's important to know, because part of the physiological chemical response in our bodies, in our brains, is that our prefrontal cortex, which sits here in our brain, our prefrontal cortex is paralyzed, which means that we are paralyzed and unable to think logically and rationally, because that's what our prefrontal cortex does. So when you are in a huge fight with somebody else, we need to realize that we physiologically cannot be logical and rational. Our brain, that part of our brain that will allow us to be logical and rational, is paralyzed. So we need to know that we are acting in an irrational manner. And we're acting in that irrational manner because of the chemistry of our body. Okay? And if we are frequently angry, that chemistry in the body takes its toll on ourselves. So whether we are angry a lot of the time and frequently we're getting that rush of the chemistry, or whether we have a slow chronic anger where our body is permanently in that place, we do a lot of damage to ourselves. And just a word about that chronic anger. If we find that we are tipping over regularly, very often it's because we have a deep bed of anger that is caused by something in our background. Often it's a little thing that we're not even aware of, but it has resulted in our bodies having a deep bed of anger. So then when there's a tiny little thing that irritates us, we explode. So if you find that you have that chronic anger, it's really important to find out what is the cause of that chronic anger and try and diffuse it. Okay, it's very bad for our bodies if we are permanently angry. So let's have a look at a few myths about anger. The first one is, I shouldn't have to hold in my anger. It's healthy to vent and let it out. No, it's damaging to us physiologically. It's damaging to others when we are permanently ranting and raving. Okay, the second myth is, anger, aggression, and intimidation of others help me to earn their respect and get what I want. Really? By bullying others? No, that also is not true. The third myth is, I can't help myself. Anger isn't something you can control. No, we can control it. We can learn to control it. It just requires a little bit of effort. And the last myth is that anger management is about learning to suppress your anger. As we'll see later in the talk, that is not the case at all. If we suppress our anger, that is equally dangerous. Okay, so those myths have been put to rest. Let's have a look at whether you maybe suffer from anger. So I'm going to read a few questions and I want you just to think carefully about them. Does this apply to me? So the first question is your anger out of proportion to the cause? In other words, the event is this little and your reaction is huge. In other words, overreacting. So is your anger out of proportion to the cause? The second question, do you feel intense anger when you think about things that have happened in the past or people who are significant in your life for one reason or another? So when you're thinking about the past, do you feel intense anger? Second question. The third question, do you find yourself angry for no reason? Suddenly the emotion is just there. Fourth question, do you find that people are guarded when they interact with you? In other words, they're not going to be completely open and honest. They're kind of a bit cautious. The next question, are there people in your life that have stopped contacting you or talking to you or try to avoid being with you? And I understand that there might be other reasons for it, but could it maybe be because of your anger? Another question, have you harmed yourself because of your anger, either physically or emotionally? And then the last question, has anyone ever told you that you have a problem with anger? Has more than one person told you this? Okay, so if you answered yes to a few of those questions, possibly you do have a problem with anger. So let's have a look now at how you can tell when other people are angry. And most of the time it's very evident. We can see the way people are walking, their body language, what their face is doing. We can see that people are angry. But let's just have a look at a few slightly more subtle symptoms that people are angry. If the person you're speaking to shuts their eyes, very often what the body is saying is, this is overwhelming and I'm losing it. Okay, so shutting their eyes is one thing. If the person you are talking to turns their body partially or fully away from you, what their body is saying is, I don't want to hear this. I can feel the anger boiling up inside me and I don't know what to do. Okay, obviously, if their voice gets louder, their tone gets more shrieky, or alternatively, their tone gets very low. For some people, you know that is the danger sign. Watch their facial expressions, particularly their eyes, because they might be trying very hard to control their anger, but you will be able to see it on their face. You will be able to maybe see a tightening of the jaw muscles. Okay. Also listen for verbal cues. People might sigh or they might grunt. Okay. And then lastly, look at somebody's hands. Very often if they're angry, their fists will be clenched and tight with the strain in trying to control their anger. Okay, so now we know whether we ourselves are angry, we know how to pick it up in somebody else, and so now we're going to start speaking about how to manage the anger. Because as I said before, the actual anger isn't a problem. If it shows us what is wrong, and then we proactively sort out the issue, then it means that anger has been used in a positive way. But our management of our anger, in other words, how we perceive things and how we react to them, that is the issue. Okay, so anger management is not telling you to make your anger go away. It's not telling you to keep it in. What it's saying is it's a very natural thing, but we need to learn how to communicate about it. Okay, so anger management is teaching you how to express your anger in a healthy way. And so obviously the big part of anger management is how we communicate. Okay, how we can express ourselves in the right way so that we can get the emotion out without the negative behavior. Does that make sense? Okay, and there are a few things that can help with anger management. Interestingly enough, our diet can affect whether we're irritable and angry. It has been proven by research that if we have too many carbohydrates in our diet, it can lead to irritation and aggression. So we need to be looking at eating the leafy vegetables, lots of color on our plate, lots of fruits, healthy proteins, low GI carbs, all of those things that we should know. But in addition, what can help us if we are suffering a lot from anger is to make sure we have vitamin C, which is a very good antioxidant, as is magnesium. Things like coconut milk, turkey, blueberries, sweet potatoes, dark chocolate and almonds are very good in keeping our bodies level, and therefore they will help us not to be so volatile. Also important is not only what you eat, but when you eat. So make sure that you are not going into an important meeting or a situation where you could be angry when you are hungry. People talk about being hangry, okay, the combination of being hungry and angry. The second thing that can help is yoga, can quieten us down, and the meditation that goes along with it. If we can meditate for between 15 to 30 minutes, that will help us immensely as well. Cardio exercise, even if it's only for 10 minutes, can help release the anger. Massage therapy, hypnotherapy, and then herbal therapy and vitamins can also help you. As far as therapy goes, there are many studies that show that cognitive behavioral therapy, or other words, CBT, which is a way of changing the way we think about things, can also be very effective. Okay, so those are a few things that can help you when you're trying to manage your anger. If you can think of any other things, I would love you to put it in the comment box below, and let's see how we can all help each other in overcoming our anger. If you are finding that this video is helpful to you, I would also love you to like it and like my page, and also to share this video, particularly if you know somebody who's angry. Maybe it will help them in some ways. Okay, so lastly, I'm going to just touch on a few strategies that will help you deal with your anger. Some of them will work for you, Others won't. So please just take what you want and gently discard the rest. So when you can feel that you're very angry, a very good strategy is to slowly count to 10. Okay? Slowly count to 10. And what that, what that does is it allows the huge chemical reactions just to abate a little bit. Okay? And it allows your rational mind to then catch up with your volatility. The second thing is give yourself a reality check. In other words, how important is this in the overall scheme of things? Is it worth getting really angry about this? Is it worth ruining my career or the rest of the party or the relationship for this? Is my response appropriate? Is there anything I can do about it? And lastly, is taking action on this worth my time? So that's giving yourself a bit of a reality check about your anger. Okay? We can also look at not in the actual moment, but something that can help you with your anger is to do a lot more relaxation. So things like deep breathing and visualization can help you a lot with that. Using imagery, you're not going to be doing it when you're in the middle of an argument, but you might do it before you go into a prospective touchy situation. Okay? Cardio exercise is very good for you, and try and do it in that it's not too strenuous, because you don't want to tax your body that's already being taxed physically. Cognitive restructuring, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, is one of the ways where we are now going to just change the way we perceive things to be. Okay, so that is a process, and very often you need a professional to help you with that. So we're going to learn to replace the negative thoughts with positive thoughts. We're going to stop using words in an argument like, this never works, or you're always getting on my back. Okay, we're going to learn how to get rid of that negative vocab and the negative thoughts. Once we have calmed down, obviously we're going to use logic to resolve the issue, but that, as I've said before, is not possible when you're in the middle of the argument. It's only afterwards. Okay, moving along. We can use our anger to solve the problem. In other words, this is going to be a really proactive and calm way of doing it. We're not going to react. We're going to be proactive and solution orientated. Okay, we're going to have better communication. Sometimes the use of humor can help, but be very careful about it, because in a state when you are fighting with somebody, you might think that you're saying something humorous, but it might be received as bullying or sarcastic. So if you are going to use humor, make sure that it really is funny for both of you. Okay? When you're in an argument, one of the things that can help is that you actually leave the place, take yourself out of the situation, go to the next room. And it doesn't mean that you are being a coward. It just means that you are removing yourself from a very volatile and potentially damaging situation until you can calm down. Okay? If you have a problem with anger, maybe you need to be making sure that you are not overworking, and take a break for 5 minutes every hour so that you don't get into that frustrated, overwhelmed state. Also, if you know that something really irritates you, for example, if you walk past your child's room and it's a mess and you know that that will make you angry, it's easy. Just avoid doing that. Don't put yourself in the situation that you know is going to make you angry. Okay? In the midst of an argument, what is really effective is to do what I call is hit the pause button. So you need time just to breathe and gather your thoughts. So if you can say something like, hold that thought. I'm just going to get a glass of water. Okay, just going to get my glass of water. And during that time, you calm your thoughts, and when you come back, you are in more control. Okay, or you can say, I've just got to go to the loo quickly. Please, I'm coming right back. But buy yourself some time so you can calm down. And then when you calm, you can express your thoughts without the anger. Okay? The next thing is, if you are aware that you're starting to get angry, try and think before you speak. Try and think before that prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, has been paralyzed. Look for possible solutions and try and do it in a very calm manner. Another very good way of diffusing anger is to use I statements, not you statements. So it's, I feel that, instead of you make me feel. Okay, so you use I statements, not you or blaming statements. Try not to hold a grudge. And then lastly, know when to seek help. Okay, so if you feel that your anger is out of control, that it is damaging you or maybe somebody else, there are lots of psychologists, coaches, therapists, and people who do complementary therapies as well, who can help you in finding out how to control your anger. But for most people, they don't need a professional to help them. If they just put a few of these strategies in place, and if you want to go Google it, there are myriads of strategies that you can use. I've just named a few of them. So if you can think of a strategy that I haven't mentioned that you find very valuable, I'd love you to put it in the comment box so that we can, as I said before, let's try and help each other so that we can learn to make our world a less angry place to live in. I thank you as always for joining me and for giving me your time. And next week I will be speaking about a thing called imposter syndrome, which essentially is how we feel very inadequate in our life. So I hope you'll join me next week and find out more about the second challenging emotional characteristic. Until then, please stay safe, and thanks again for watching.